Okay. Let's bring the volume down on the music. That should be good. We're gonna jump right to this today. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we're going to be painting another painting by another one of my very, very favorite artists. Today, the artist that we're going to be featuring, his name is Sheldon Cohen. And let's take a look, actually, even before we jump, well, you know, let's take a look at that directly. I got a lot of stuff that I want to cover. So, let me see. Let's open these files up, and I'll show you the artwork that we're going to be looking at. If it opens up here. Oh, there we go. Nope. Let's do it all. We want it all opening up in one folder here. Hope you guys are doing well and survived the incredible heat here in Vancouver. It was the hottest it has ever been. So if we were trying to do this just a few days ago, it just would not have worked because how intense the heat was. I left a thermometer outside, and granted it was in the sun, but it went off the chart, so it went above 50 degrees. So it was over 50 degrees in the direct sun, which is 120 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Which is insane, right? That's hotter. I lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, and it never got quite that hot. Yesterday it was a high of 41 degrees, which is like 112 degrees Fahrenheit, around there somewhere. So pretty darn hot. And it was actually 25 degrees Celsius higher than it normally is. So it's normally around 21 degrees. Or about, what is that, 70, or even like, yeah, about 75 or something. Anyway, so let's take a look at the artwork that we're going to be painting today. So this is the image that speaks to me the most from what I think is one of the most incredible short films ever made, particularly if you're Canadian. If you're Canadian like myself, you've probably seen the hockey sweater at least once. And if you, I put a link to it in the video description below, and we're going to take a quick, I'll show you the link here in a second, but it is, every Canadian has seen it. Maybe it's been a long time since they've seen it, but, and it doesn't even matter if you care or watch hockey at all. It in some ways has absolutely nothing to do with hockey, and we'll get into all that here in a second. So there is an outline here. I'm going to show you how to find the outline. I've also, this is actually the cover, or actually it's the spread. Here's the actual spread from the inside the book, which, I've got a copy. I got the French and the English versions of this book, which I've actually had for years, and I was surprised I was able to find these. But this is inside the book on page 3 and 4, right? So what I've done is I've scanned that whole thing and put it in here. And then I actually just crushed them a little bit. I got rid of a bit of the space that was in the middle. So if you want to paint this version of the painting, there's another outline for that here. Now this is a little bit more of a complex one. So if you want to do that, you have the opportunity to do it, but I'm going to focus on this one because what I think is kind of interesting is the possibility for you to customize this image by putting your own posters, changing the curtains and the carpet, and maybe it's not a hockey jersey, but it's a football jersey, or it's a dress, it's a ballerina costume, or a clown outfit. And maybe this image on the wall here, which is a photograph of two hockey players celebrating after scoring a goal. Maybe it's not a hockey scene, but it's a tennis scene. Maybe it's a girl on her bed dreaming about Serena Williams. Or it's an old man dreaming about his youth having played hockey. Or it doesn't even have to be about sports. It could be rock concert stuff, which is why in this version of the outline I actually put in these slightly faded areas here, because this would be where you could put other things onto the walls if you wanted, right? So you could literally fill it right up. I remember as a kid, doing the same sort of thing, putting up all sorts of posters all over the walls. So if you wanted to go back in time and decorate this image with some of the things that were on your walls as a kid, then here's what some of those would look like. Okay, so let's I want to show you how we can find these files. You'll see in the down below there's a link to a Dropbox folder, and you look at this Dropbox folder, you see there's all sorts of things in here, right? All the way from the Mona Lisa to painting Batman and Superman to today's painting. And if you're interested, here's some of the stuff that's coming up a little bit further. We're going to do 5 paintings for Tom Thompson. We're going to do 4 paintings for Vincent van Gogh. We're going to celebrate the Calgary Stampede with a couple of the most famous Western artists who ever lived. Charles M. Russell, or Charlie Russell, and Carl Ringus. Who's, his entire, most of his most famous paintings are at the Glenbow Museum in Calgary, right? Anyway, so if we click in here, you'll see that there's all of these files, of which you saw many. Basically, there's the 2 outlines. There's a JPEG and a PDF version, whichever is easier for you to print out, and then the originals. And I even included the spread here, so that in case you wanted to do the really big version, you've got it all. You've got all the information there to do what you want with it. I'll also let you know that in the description below there's a link to the Facebook page. I haven't been on here in a few days, but see, people have been pretty busy. So I'll try today to, after today's class, to go in and take a look at some of that. But let's take a look at who Sheldon Cohen is and why we're painting today's painting. So the hockey sweater is a story that was written by Rush Carrier. And Rush Carrier, I wonder if there's a better French, Rush Carrier, is he, I think he's still alive. And I think Sheldon Cohen, both of them are still, it makes me feel bad for even saying that. Yeah, okay. He's definitely getting up in age. Same thing with Sheldon Cohen. Both of them are Quebecois artists. Rush Carrier is a beloved writer. I'm sure he's probably in the Order of Canada. Because he's a celebrated, iconic author in Canada. Although I would say most people who know him would probably know him through the hockey sweater, if at least know him from there first, because these are books that, again, as I said, most kids have heard at least once somebody read to them. We'll talk a little bit about the actual story of the hockey sweater as we do our painting, so I won't go too far into that. If you want to watch it, and you're, I don't know if this is restricted to just Canada, but if you're in Canada, your tax dollars helped fund this film, so you can watch it here on the National Film Board of Canada, the NFB. and let's make that. The National Film Board of Canada is pretty famous, maybe less so today in the current generation, but when I was growing up, and really from the mid-1960s, they really began to fund a lot of animations, and some of the more experimental animations globally were created here in Canada and funded by the National Film Board. And you may have even seen this iconic image. There's an animation of it kind of in green at the beginning of many films from the 60s through 80s. So I encourage you to watch that. You can also find this on YouTube, actually, and I think I posted a link there on the Facebook page if you want to read that. Or watch it, sorry. It's 10 minutes long. If you want to know a little bit about Canada, I can't recommend it enough. And let's see. Oh, it's not going to let me click on this article that I had. Okay, but anyway, if you just do a quick search, you'll see how important this article is. They've made a play based on, or like a musical version of it. And if we go back here, Sheldon Cohen, as an artist, he's also illustrated a few other things, also in collaboration with Roche Carrier, including... these are his animations, and he did do the animations for this book, Le Chandail d'Aki, and it doesn't list his other books here, because they also did, I guess it's not under his, let me see if we scroll down in Roche Carrier's one here. They did a few other collaborations. Why is... one about the invention of basketball, and there's another one about cycling. Anyway, so let's get right into the painting. And today, usually, I'll also say I've done a whole bunch of the outlines for the upcoming episode, and those are all there up on the Dropbox folder. So if you want to get a head start and outline some of these things beforehand, you have all the tools to do so. You can also see I've got a new microphone here. Now, the placement is not ideal. I didn't even realize that until we started here, but the audio should be much better than it's been in a while. Although we do have all these fans going on here, so there might be a little bit of that sound in the background. Okay, so let's get a canvas going here. And... oops, we want... okay. So, here is the image. And I've got a nice blank canvas. Here's a 9x12. That's basically the size that I use all the time. A 9x12. And if you want to get this exact one, there's a link in the description below to this exact brand. I also put a little bit of gesso on it. So I open this up, and then I put some gesso on it, let it sit and dry. I usually do a whole bunch all at once, about 20 or 30 all at a time, and I let them dry. And then before I start painting or do anything on it, I take some sandpaper. This is 220 grit sandpaper. And that's relatively new sandpaper I put on there. I think I changed that just a few days ago on camera, so that's nice. Now it's even smoother than it normally is. Okay, so now let's... now this doesn't really have to be too straight. It's a hand-drawn image, and it's intended to be fairly simple, right? And I chose it because I liked how straightforward. You know what? I bought new pencils the other day, and I keep forgetting to open these up. So let's keep using the same pencils down to the bone. these are a whole bunch of new paint brushes. I'm not sure how much I probably spent about, all in all, each one of these is about $4 a piece. $4 to $6, somewhere around that. And these are really nice, small, super detailed brushes. In fact, I liked this one a lot because it's kind of, this is not a mistake. It's like this because it can actually make your life a little bit easier if you're painting with a brush that's already kind of bent like that. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. So, and some new pencils. Okay. So here's some carbon paper. Let's do a quick outline of this. I see there's lots of comments in the chat. I'll get to that as quickly as possible. I think we'll put this, we'll do the outline really quickly, and then we'll put the paint on there, or underpainting, and then we'll take a little bit of a second for that. Okay, so I'm just going to paint the basic version, the original that we see on camera. So I'm just going to trace those, basically what you see on the screen right now. But if you want to customize this picture and make it your own, feel free to, you could draw all of these boxes that are kind of a little bit faded out on the wall, and then you could, I don't know, you could put, it could be a Miley Cyrus painting if you want to do it. Let's say, our daughter, she's almost 2 years old. I could put Peppa Pig stuff all over because she's obsessed with Peppa Pig. But it could be Taylor Swift or Metallica or all sorts of different kinds of things. You could also change the configuration of this room, or you could just, it could be a totally different kind of a space. This could be the room that you always wanted when you were a kid. You could change the clothing here very easily, right? You could put, a dress or shorts or a kilt, or you could, a bathing suit. It could be anything, right? And this figure looks fairly androgynous, right? As many little kids do to begin with, right? It's quite common for people to mistake the gender of your child when you're walking around. So you can change the hair color. You could make the hair longer or shorter. You could change the haircut to mohawk if you wanted, and you could put, I don't know, Ramones posters and Nirvana and all sorts of things up on the walls, or it could be Woodstock posters, and this kid could be wearing bell bottoms, and you could have Jimi Hendrix up there, and so feel free to have a little bit of fun with the painting. As I said, I'm just going to do the basic version. This pencil costs like $3, maybe even $4 on the high end, if I recall. But what a difference it makes when you use like artist quality materials. Like this pencil, yes, it is more expensive. You can get for $2 at the dollar store, or $1 in the United States, but in the dollar stores in Canada, nothing's ever really $1. But if you, for a couple of dollars or whatever, you could get a whole pack of Crayola pencils. At the art supply store, you're like, why is it so much more expensive? It's it feels so much different. It's much softer. Like I may even have to sharpen this pencil in the next minute before I'm even done, whereas a cheap pencil is much harder lead, as you might call it. So it's among other things easier on your hands because it sort of it's like a bit of it absorbs some of the pressure that you're putting on to the canvas. Oh my goodness, that's my overhead camera overheated already, and we're okay. So I'm gonna let that cool down for a second, and I've got to run and get my ice pack. So just hold on 1 second, everybody. I will be right back. Sorry about that. Let's put some of these ice packs in a plastic bag so that when they melt, they don't droop all over the camera. Let's see if that works. Whew. Maria's joining us here from Virginia. Wow, I wonder what's the temperature in Virginia today. Woo! I've heard the temperature out on the East Coast is not nearly as hot as it is here on the West Coast. So like usually in Vancouver, the temperature doesn't get... My pencil sharpener's not plugged in. Man, I've had that same pencil sharpener for 20 years. And for about 15 of those years, it's been on the fritz. I think I am going to replace it. Whew. I am sweating already. Upstairs in our house, it is about 35 degrees Celsius, which is... what, about 85 maybe, or somewhere around there, Fahrenheit. Okay, now I'm actually just gonna, let's actually move these down. I was debating, do I want to use a ruler for some of this? I don't think so. I don't think it's necessary, and even if it's a little bit wobbly, that actually kind of works with Sheldon Cohen's style. I don't think he's ever used a ruler in his artwork anyway, so. And here's this checkerboard. Oof. Oh yes, and over here in the window. Okay, so hopefully that's all on there. See, it's always a good idea to double check. I forgot the eye. Now, obviously, most of the detail's been lost here. Also, because the pencils I was using got soft, and my pencil sharpener is not working. So it's one of those things, right? Sometimes you just there's things that go a little bit sideways when you're making art, and you just got to roll with it. So let's put some paint on here. Whoa, it's 105 degrees Fahrenheit near near Washington, D.C. Woo! Okay, so I just took all the materials I have out of here. Most of the people that watch these episodes are brand new to the channel, so welcome. And if you're wondering what the colors I'm using, why I'm using the colors I use, I did a whole 45 episode long series where I talked, at least in the first 2 or 3 episodes, and that's down below, the Intro to Painting course. And okay, so I just took some of my hot or warm, my warm yellow. It is very hot, but anyway. So I'm going to put some water in here, just to thin it out a little bit. Okay. Now, Sheldon Cohen, and this is actually what the image we're painting today is a still from the animation. So this is actually not an image that's in the book. As far as I can tell, and I could be entirely wrong, but as far as I can tell, the book was published after the film, about 4 years after the film. Now, the original short story by Rush Carrier was published, I think, in '78. So the short story was published, and I've actually read. I was just a few days ago reading the original short story, and it is a little bit different than the one in the illustrated book, and it's also a little bit different than the narration, which Rush Carrier also did for the film, but very, very minor difference. Like, we're talking like just a few extra sentences, changing a word here and there, but for all intents and purposes, they're all very, very similar. Just owing to the fact that the illustrated version has pictures there, so there's certain things that maybe don't need to be so explicitly described because the pictures are doing some of the heavy lifting. Anyway, so what we're illustrating today is a still from the animated film, which I strongly encourage you to watch. If you're going to watch this whole episode, why not watch the film that everything's based on? And would Sheldon Cohen have gone to the same level of prepping the surface as I am right now? Probably not. I don't know if he would have. He probably wouldn't have put a yellow ground down here, which is what I traditionally do, because that's traditionally what artists do. And over time, especially throughout the course of these episodes, I've done this more and more and more, because I'm more and more falling in love with the look of this kind of bright, warm yellow that helps make all the paintings glow, and it makes the colors it dials up the saturation on the colors just like 15%, which I love. And I know some people do not like that look at all, but you know, it's what I like. Okay, well, lots of comments here. So let me just get... Well, this is basically dry already, so I don't even need to use the hair dryer, which is one of the things I'm in my mind thinking as I'm working on prepping some of these episodes, thinking, okay, what can I do that doesn't involve much blending? Because blending, as we've seen over the past few weeks, as it's got hotter and hotter, or more and more hot, is one of the things that acrylic paint struggles with in high heat, high humidity kind of spaces. So that's one reason why I also chose this picture, because we wouldn't have to do too much of that. If we're doing small blending in small places, not a problem, right? But if we're trying to do large areas, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay. So in the comments there, I see Joshua says, hello Michael, I'm going to opt out today because the live stream started when I was painting a landscape. But I do love the choice of artwork today because the sweater film was awesome for its time. And there's Heidi says, hi Michael, hi everyone. Maria's joining us live from Virginia, finally. Maria says, I'm so happy to finally catch up. Please forgive my English. My keyboard is German and I'm Brazilian. Wow, that is like, I mean, I've heard of like keyboards being slightly different for different languages, which makes sense. But it didn't even occur to me that German to English would be that much different. And then Brazilian, I can imagine also that's like you're basically trying to type in 3 different languages. Amy says, it's so hot. Dolores says, I'm watching out on my deck today as it is just too hot in my condo where my studio area is. Joshua says, it's close to 110 degrees Fahrenheit in Texas. That's about 45 or something around there. That's about what it is here. It's a little bit hotter than it is here in Vancouver, but we're pretty darn close to you. Heidi says, people don't often realize that air conditioners are not common in residences in Vancouver. Strange to see Michael wearing so much. Well, you know, this is sort of my uniform. I like wearing this. It makes me a little bit hot, but I've just been wearing it for so long, and it's just part of my routine. And I'm really big into routine and habits. I'm just finishing up a book called, I've been reading it for a few months, but 5 a.m. Club, I think it's called. And it's all about like really reinforcing like the power of habit and routine. I have a book over here, The Atomic Habits. And it's something about just like these habits are really important to me as an artist. Like, and all of those of you who've been painting along with me for, you know, some of you it's been a few months, some of you it's been 8 months, some of you took the painting class and the drawing class before that, and some of you are even in my in-person classes even before that. So you guys are really in a really nice habit and routine. Okay, so let's look at that. Bone dry in like 5 minutes. So let's put some paint onto our palette here and start painting. As far as I can see, we will probably use a little bit of every color. So I'm going to put them all on there, but I'm going to put very little paint on my palette at a time. Because it is so hot that this paint is like the minute it comes out of these tubes. Oops, that's my cool red, so we'll put the warm red in the other spot here. And then I can switch these around nice and easy. Even though they're technically in the wrong places, but that can at least make sense for viewers what's going on here. Okay, so, and we need a little bit of white because we're going to be mixing some of that. Okay, so how should we go about making this painting? Let's take a look at the image and just sort of think a little bit about the next few steps that we're going to take here. So we're going to mix like an off-white. We'll probably mix a gray. Well, that'll probably be one of my first steps, is to mix a gray that we can use to do the in fact, let's zoom in on a few of these areas. Oops. So we can use this gray, obviously, for the black and white photograph and for the bedpost and the radiator and maybe even a little bit of the colors in the rug. But we can then also add more color, more white into it to do some of the walls. In fact, we'll probably use that for the walls, and for the background, we'll just make it a little bit darker gray, more of a brownish gray. We can use that for the floor. Gray is like a color that is really important for painting. Gray and brown, and really they're probably the two least exciting colors when you think of it. But gray and brown are probably the colors, if you were to take every painting ever made, at least up until maybe the 1950s, because we see the color palettes have gotten increasingly more bright as we have, because we now have much more access to different colors, and the synthetic nature of most paint now. Most paint isn't organic, it's all made, it's all chemical, so they're all synthetic, and so that has changed the palettes, but that's a whole other digression. I would say, if you were to go in and select the colors most used throughout all of art history, probably the #1 color that's used most often would be brown, and then gray, and then probably white, and then probably black, around #4, and then after that probably a few different kinds of yellow, and then there'd be probably a few different kinds of red, which are also very close to brown, right? And then you go all the way down that, then you'd have maybe some green, then you'd have a little bit of blue, and at the very end of that spectrum you'd have purple. Probably purple would be probably the most unused color for, again, lots of different reasons, because it was a very hard color to mix with older palettes, and that's why royal purple was one of the most expensive materials you could possibly buy. Anyway, so let's make it gray. Going off on these tangents. So I'm just going to use a little larger paintbrush. So to make a gray, we could just use some black and white, and boom, we're done. And so that's a fairly easy, straightforward way of going about things. I am going to make, I think I've done a number of warm grays over the past few episodes, so let's do a cool gray. I mean, the difference is very small, but just so you can see that it's possible, we're going to take some cool yellow and some cool blue. We mix this up, and wow, look at that nice bright green here, almost fluorescent green, right? There'd be very few occasions where you'd actually use this green, because it is so bright that the only place you would maybe use it is for you know, if we're doing like a comic book painting and you're doing like the Green Lantern, or like trying to describe candy, anything with like artificial food coloring, So very few times you'd actually use that color just like that. Anyway, so let's, our cool yellow and our cool blue. Let's take some of our cool red. Right, and we start mixing this into here, and we're basically going to get a cool brown. And I put a lot of red into it. So it's got kind of a purpley quality. Put a bit more yellow in here, and you'll see it go brown. There we go. So now we've got our cool brown. Now, to make it go gray, it's basically just adding one more color, which would be, it could be any of the other colors. Really, it's, so right now this is like a pretty muddy, cold brown. Right. Let's add a little bit of the warm red in here. It's a little much. A little bit of the warm blue. And basically what we're doing, all these colors are intersecting through the middle of the neutral core, and they're just neutralizing one another. So a little bit more blue. There we go. Just this muddy mix. I think we've basically used every color except warm yellow, so let's just take a bit of warm yellow. So now we've used all 6 in there. Okay, so kind of an ugly looking color. If we want it to be darker, we just add a little bit more of the blues in here. But my goal is not really to use that. I don't even, well, I guess there's no real place for that color on its own, but let's now take some white and just mix this in here. And you can see now we've got what looks to be like a grayish brown, right? It's a brown, but it doesn't have much saturation or energy to it. We can make a much brighter brown. In fact, we're going to do that for the pants of the boy on the bed there. But so let's now just take some more white. I'm just going to mix this off to the side here. You can see the more white we add, the more you can really see it's just gray, right? I mean, it's got a little bit of color to it, but anyway. So let's look at this picture. Let's zoom out and let's change. To this view here, and then I'm just going to paint this grayish color. Went significantly over top of the curtains for some reason, but if you get your finger in there quick enough, you can just wipe it away. Now it's definitely a little bit of a different color than the one in the original. It doesn't bother me too much. The one in the original has got a bit more green to it. If I want, I can do a little bit of a glaze on that and make it a little bit more green. This one's a little bit more on the purple side, right? That's because we just have a lot more red and blue in it, right? If we add a little bit more yellow into this, and maybe even a little bit more blue, then we'll get that color. Okay, so let's just keep on going here. We're going to add significantly more white, so maybe I'll just do this right here. And we can paint Right, so this is this color, just has got this kind of grayish look. Now it's a little bit more, I guess I probably could have added a lot more white into it, and maybe we'll do that if we want. I don't know, we'll see. And sometimes, you know, what I like doing is just throwing color into places on the canvas, fill it up. I was thinking like the first hour of a painting is just, it's like paint by numbers a little bit. Like you're just, or not even paint by numbers, it's just fill it up. Put stuff there. And then we can change it. So, you know, I'll probably brighten that up. Let's do the same thing. Let's get this here. Well, this time I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow into that wall. So I just took a bit of that cool yellow and white. Let's see how that affects things. Let's get a bit more yellow. You can see I'm using a pretty big brush to do all this, and you've probably seen me do this often, right? I often use a really big brush just to get the paint onto the painting, and then later on I get a little bit more specific. Okay. Let's do the floor. Okay, so the floor, got this white. Let's take a bit more of the brown back in here, maybe even a bit of this. So it's just kind of gray, right? So let's get a bit more of a browny kind of color. Okay. It's a little bit on the darker side, isn't it? Yeah, it's a little bit too gray. But I'll modify that later on. I just mostly interested at this point just covering things up here. Okay. And there's this little bit of the wall there that I missed. Okay, and this color, I'm gonna mix a brown. Okay. Yeah, I'll just clean that brush off a little bit. This color was just way too gray. So I'm just going to mix it again. Let's take some warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. Oops. Okay, so we got that brown. Let's take some white. Okay. Woo. A lot of very different colors here in the painting so far. But that doesn't faze me at all. I'm never ever interested in nailing the color right off the bat. Often because I'm going to paint, I know I'm going to paint a little bit over top of it later on. So just getting something is all I want. I just want to get something onto the canvas that I can work with later on. In fact, I might even take that color, the color I got in my paintbrush, and just mix this up a little bit. And let's just see. Even more white. Still not quite there, but I think it's okay. Okay. So, what should we do next? Let's take that a little bit smaller brush. Let's paint some gray on here. Let's zoom in. So I probably, I love this film. This is like one of the most important films for me personally that I've ever seen, and I know it's very important for a lot of other Canadians, but I probably would not have originally selected this. It wasn't on my radar to paint until the Montreal Canadiens got into the Stanley Cup final just a few days ago. They did it while we were live on one of our previous videos, which was kind of remarkable. But And I chose, I mean, obviously there's the connection to hockey here, but as I was sort of like, what image should we paint that, you know, is kind of a hockey related image? Should we make a painting of a famous hockey player? And I was thinking, well, you know, one of the, you know, like I was looking up iconic photographs from hockey history, and Maurice Richard pops up because Maurice Richard was, you know, one of the most, he was one of the best hockey players who ever lived, right? So it's not surprising that he would show up, you know, if you do an image search for famous hockey photos. And you know what? I'm going to paint this same color. It's a slightly off white. I'm just going to paint it all over this. So this isn't a pure bright white. It's a little bit off, but it'll be kind of nice to have this as a kind of our foundational color where this photograph is. And then we can paint some darker stuff over top of it. It's supposed to be a black and white photograph. Like, my goal here is not to cover everything up. I don't mind having that white coming through. Beautiful. Just want to have a, that's kind of maybe the color of the ice in this photograph. Okay. Let's go the other way. Oh. Oh. Okay. So let's take a look at the original here. What else can we just get out of the way at this point? I think we can now paint the, I'm going to paint the white on the bed sheets. I'm just going to use the white right off of the palette. Let's just upgrade to a bigger brush here. And as I do this, I might just paint a little bit over top of these lines just to hide them a little bit. Oops, that's supposed to be where the blue goes, isn't it? Okay. So let's do that again. Let's paint this. So the point is we want to have like different, like it to be pretty clearly visible that this white is different than the white elsewhere. No matter what you do, it's generally desirable to have lots of variety in your colors in your paintings. Because it just makes it look more sophisticated, right? If you just have the same 3 colors over and over and over, it doesn't mean it can't work. There's plenty of paintings that are monochrome or have very limited palettes, but it's actually more difficult to do it that way. You know, it's like trying to write a good song with only 5 words. You know, what, there's that George Harrison song, so I got my mind stuck on you, that's 12 words or something. I think it was a bet that he, you know, what's the shortest song that you can write? I think he did. So yeah, George Harrison can pull it off. And Andy Warhol can pull it off. But for the rest of us mere mortals, it's pretty tricky. Okay. And I guess there is the boats in the on the curtains. I suppose I'll use a slightly smaller brush. I always just try to use the biggest brush possible. And you can see when I do this, I get a little bit sloppy and I go outside the lines a bit. But it's also because I'm going to be painting stuff over and around all of this anyway, so I'm not too concerned about being perfect. Those of you who've been painting along with me for a while know that already, but okay. Oh, and then there's the so I'm going to probably widen the window frame here. All right, this was the edge of my paper. So I'm just going to continue this right off the edge here, and this is that crossbeam. So what we're looking at is this bottom right corner. I've got just a little bit more room here to add stuff, so I will. Okay. So I'm debating to paint. So this is actually, it's even interesting just to look at this right now. So you've got this cool blue here, and we've got a warm blue over here, right? Can you see that this is a bit more purpley blue versus this is a bit more of a well, it's leaning towards a bit more of a yellowy blue. It's a not very cool blue because there's a bit of white in there, but we can get pretty close if we just mix these colors right now. Oops, I need some white. So I think I'm just gonna plow ahead and start putting in some color where I can. Just got paint all over my thumb. Okay. So that's okay, but it's a little bit too on the baby blue side. So let's take a bit of the warm blue and mix it back in here. And I think we'll be a little bit closer to the color we want. Oh. So... I just realized I forgot to do the white on the masts of these boats. Oh, well, we'll do that later, I guess. Uh-oh. Got another camera overheated, and I'm not exactly sure how I will keep that camera that's facing me from overheating. It's the first time it's overheated. So my main camera has just stopped working. That's tricky. So, I don't know how. I guess I just have to let it stay off for a while and let it cool down. At least the one I have above my head that you see on the screen right now, I can put an ice pack on the back of it to keep it cold. The other camera, however, is upright, so... You know, when I'm thinking to myself, there's always a question in my mind, like, which color should I do first? Because will it allow me to, you know, basically which color works best on top of the other color? Right, that's a big thing that I think about. That really guides a lot of the order of the way that I make any of these paintings. And I'm trying to see if I could boil it all down to the most simple way possible. I mean, ideally colors that have white in it, or are white, or are black, are great colors to put on last, because they are both they're gonna cover up everything else pretty well. So I think I'll have to do that again. Not quite as opaque as I'd like. I just want to see if I can get my camera working again here. One second. Okay. Oh, what, I got paint on my face already? Well, we'll hope that's paint and not, I didn't just somehow cut myself. Okay. So let's, if we zoom out on this picture and... let's put some warm blue into these places, and it's going to be similar sort of thing, except before we use the cool blue, now we're going to add white to this warm blue, and you'll see we have a slightly different color that results, right? So we take this warm blue, let's take some white. Right? Can you see already like the difference between this, and obviously I did put a bit of warm blue in there, but as we put this in there, it's got a bit of a purpley quality, very super subtle quality. But once you understand how the color wheel works, you're like, oh, I see, it's got a bit of that purpley kind of thing going on. Okay. Oops. If anything, I put too much white into this, so it's quite pastel. But if I'd use this and then I paint a little bit, like I could almost basically do a glaze of the original warm blue over top of this, and I think you'd get pretty darn close to the color you see. So I would love to see if people customize this picture, what they actually do to it to change it. I think you could have a lot of fun, which is one of the reasons why I chose this picture. Is I thought, you know, it's not. There's a few hockey fans I gathered from the last episode who were wanting to watch the hockey game, but I think most people probably aren't particularly interested in hockey. But we've all been little kids, or we have little kids ourselves, or grandkids ourselves. So many people will remember what it was like to be laying in bed and dreaming of their favorite, celebrity or rock band, etc. So that brush had too much water in it. I just took it right out of the... So let's do that again. Okay. So it's funny whenever I'm painting, I always think to myself, there's a lot of people who pop in and out of every episode, and there's obviously people who will pop in and be like, "That's garbage. I can't believe it," and they tune out, and they never see the painting as it develops completely and gets all the way till the end. At which time, the painting really changes, right? All these colors, particularly the colors on the walls, are going to change a little bit. But a lot of people who don't understand the painting process think that the color, the paint that you put on the palette should be visible from the moment you put it down all the way to the very end. Whereas, at least anyone who has like a knowledge of art history and traditional painting practices know that that's really not how things work at all. But okay. Deborah says, we have lots of yard work that we have to get done before the rain hits us. I have to go, but we'll watch tomorrow, and thank you, Michael, for giving us the option of changing it. Thanks, Deborah. Deborah also says, so much is in this still shot. There is a rag rug on the floor made from old clothes, a material that is worn or left over. The window looks like an upstairs window in a Canadiana house. Yeah, I don't know that specific details about the carpet, although it wouldn't surprise me. Particularly kind of I think of my parents' generation and the generation before, like that very frugal people who maybe grew up in the Depression or were children of parents children whose parents grew up in the Depression and who like saved everything. Right? I've that compulsion to collect and everything is something that's been passed down to me for sure. Okay. So, you know what? Let's paint the stripes on the bed. And actually, I like the stripes on the bed. I'm going to use a bit more of this, the cool blue that we used for the curtains. I'm going to paint that on the bed because that actually kind of looks like what Sheldon Cohen did. So let's zoom in. I mean, this is an area that I feel confident I'm probably not going to be doing too much tinkering with other colors, so I feel kind of confident being able to put this down right now. One of the things that I do, however, is I like to carry, if there's going to be a line that's going to go on, I like to do that all the way through, as opposed to doing all of this, and then all of this, and all of this. I'm going to work across so that at least there's more of a likelihood that they're going to kind of visually connect. Right, like you see, I think in his image, or they do kind of come down, but I just didn't trace it that way. Right, you can see my pencil lines are kind of hovering underneath there. It depends on how dark your pencil lines are when you put them there. But don't feel like just because the line is there that your paintbrush has to go right on top of that line. The other great thing about this, the hockey sweater film, or I think it's called The Sweater, as opposed to the original story is The Hockey Sweater, is the music. The music is, for me, so iconic. Right? It's has this... It has a very like French Canadian, like rural Canadian kind of quality. Like there's like a violin and a piano and maybe an accordion or something on there. Maybe there's a harmonica. All the kind of instruments that you might once have found in a family home. It's hard for younger people to imagine, but there was a time where people didn't have phones that had access to every song ever made instantly available to them. And even a time like, you know, when I was growing up, my parents had a record player and they could put on, you know, it was the Beatles or whatever. But, you know, I think Roche Carrier is kind of talking about a time even before that where it was, you know, the radio might be the only kind of music you would have in your house, and the radio didn't necessarily always have content. It's not like today where you turn on your television any time in the day and you can hear the news or whatever. I mean, I remember as a kid the TV, at like 1 in the morning or something, they would play the national anthem and they'd have this like view flying over the Canadian landscape, and then it would just go beep and the color bars would come on, and it's like, okay, I guess that's it. Right? I mean, it's almost bizarre to think of it now. Like, it seems like so long ago, but that's only like, what, probably, I wonder when the last time they did that was. Probably in the late 90s, maybe? We went to kind of more of a 24-hour TV. You know, for a while, then it would just be infomercials in the middle of the night, and then they realized there's actually still a lot of people up, and they'd be airing reruns, and now they actually have original content airing at 3 or 4 in the morning, like cartoons, Adult Swim, you know, Cartoon Network. Okay, so let's take a look at these two paintings here. What should we do next? There's lots of color down here. So in fact, I think what we could do is we could do a little bit of the color down here, and then that will give us some color, like reds, that we're going to put in a few different places elsewhere on here. So maybe, yeah, let's zoom in on the carpet. So I'm just going to take this same color and I'm not really going to try to get the colors exactly where they were in the original. I'm just going to go around and just really fill this up with let's just finish I had a carpet, or my parents, or I don't know, but it just reminds me of a carpet that I had as a kid with this, I guess, like Deborah was saying, like the old rags or t-shirts. That's funny, like now it's bringing back all sorts of memories. I wonder, I don't think that was something that my own family would have made. But who knows? I'm sure it's long, long gone. I don't think my parents would have hung on to it, but... And again, you can see how like I'm being a little bit sloppy. Some of these lines are a little bit bigger than others. Let's just go right to the warm blue here, different blue. There's no rhyme or reason for the way that I'm doing this, right? So I want to fill this up as quickly as possible. The only thing I'm trying to do is just create as much variety as possible. And so I'm kind of trying to get a bit of randomness going on here. Yikes, that was a bit of a... Okay. Oh, you know what? While I've got this darker blue on my brush, let's do the blue on the sweater here. And there's a stripe down here. Okay, I think that's all the blue in the painting that we need so far. So let's, actually I don't even need to clean that brush, because we can just sort of, let's go, actually since I did clean this brush, let's go to a little red. And while I've got this red on my brush, and you know what, I'll let that dry actually just for a second. Obviously, you could probably just make this a brown rug if you wanted, or if you have a rug growing up that this reminds you of, you could paint it that color or that pattern, that texture. Like, that's a pretty tough movement to get with your wrist, so that's why it's all a little, that area's going to be a little bit funky for a while. Again, for me, it's just I want to fill this in as quickly as possible. and then I'll come in and touch it up and fix the shape of some of these lines. Okay. So I'm leaving a little space in between here because that's where the white is going to go on the stripes, right? And if I make a mistake like I just did, well, don't worry, because we're going to be painting white there. And it's going to look great right over top of all that. Right, so there's a little, I got a bit of paint elsewhere on the canvas, doesn't bother me too much. Oh, and then there's the red on the curtains too. So one thing you may notice is when I paint this red over top of the blue, it gets a bit of like this darker color because it's mixing with the color below it, which if is maybe a you don't like or you like, I don't know, but you can just keep that in the back of your mind, thinking like you can use that to create like almost like a outline, right, for yourself. If you decide, okay, you know, if I paint this and I just go a little bit over the line, then it's like I've got a black outline around it. And I can also tell that this is pretty much probably the way that he did it as well, painted this blue and then the red over top of it, because this blue has some white in it, so it's less likely it would probably cover up rather than be semi-transparent like the red is. So that's also how I know that I'm kind of using a similar sort of process that he did. Okay, so let's continue with the carpet, and let's get some. I think we'll get some greens in here that we haven't had yet, or some yellow. You know, I'll just take this little colors that I've got around here. This is a kind of a darker browny color. So the reason I was saying earlier about how, you know, some of the most common colors are gray and brown is I think a lot of people today, a lot of artists forget how important those colors are in their paintings, and they end up using bright colors all the time. Like, I like bright colors, and I use them in my paintings a lot, as you've probably seen. But I'm careful only to use a little bit of them. You know, it's like truffles or something, right? Like, I like truffles, but I find too much of it and the taste can be overpowering and can turn a food that I like into something kind of a little bit distasteful, right? It's almost like anything, but I think, you know, when you're starting out, you think like, oh, I got access to all these bright colors, so I'm going to use all the bright colors I can. And then you're like, why does this painting look kind of garish? And but you can't quite figure out, oh, maybe it's too dark. It needs more bright colors. And you end up just keep on adding more and more and more, when what you got to do is add less and less and less. So it's always you got to moderate things a little bit. Okay, so let's take this bright yellow, cool yellow, and cool blue. We'll make this green. So the past few days have been so hot that I'm glad that temperatures are starting to come down. Obviously, I've had already a little bit of problems with my technology because of the heat, but I'm hoping the worst is behind us now. And I think a lot about like some of the people that aren't as fortunate as we are to have air conditioning and or to even be able to leave the house. You know, my daughter and I have gone for walks when it was just oppressively hot, and there's lots of people who are kind of trapped in their home, and that would be really, really terrible. Those people that die that way. I know in Montreal, speaking of Montreal, that happens a lot because they get these like intense heat waves, which can be catastrophic for particularly some of the elderly who might not be able to get out of bed, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so how about I'm going to take that same color and I'm just going to add a bit of white to it. Turn it into a bit more like a candy color. No, it's a bit more yellow. Right, so it's just a process of just filling this up. Like, I really don't care about, you know, there's no issue in my mind of trying to get the things quote unquote right. I just want to get as much color in there as possible. So the next, let's do a bit of actually let's want cool red, warm blue. We'll get a purple. Got any purple on here yet? Like the way, as I'm actually now just looking at the original, like I thought mine was kind of sloppy, and then I look at the original, and Sheldon Cohen's is pretty like wild and messy. already, right? Like, I'd actually say his, like, mine seems more organized than his does. And I was just painting mine haphazard, right? So that should really give you permission in this area just to let loose. Yeah, now I'm thinking about these rugs. Like, whatever happened to these rugs? Why? You don't see these at all anymore. You don't see them at IKEA or wherever else. I remember there was a time when almost everybody had one of these on their bedroom floors, or, you know. Huh. So there's a little bit of black that he's got in his. It's a question like, do you want to put any of that in there or not? I don't know if I want it just yet. Okay. So let's zoom back out. Okay. So, you know, again, one of the reasons why I suggested people customize it is there are these areas where there's just a lot of empty space, right? So putting something into this area seems to make some kind of logical sense, right? And if we look at the image that I've done here, remember that this is, like, we have a sloping roof, right? And so we have, and then we have this sort of cut in the roof, and then the window kind of going upwards, right? So we have this plane here, this plane here, that one kind of going up, and then this one here, right? So that's why it might be helpful for you if you want to put any posters onto these walls to help kind of clarify a little bit of that. Let's paint the boy next, and then we're making like really good time. Like, it seems like we've taken quite a long time, but really it's just getting everything in here. Like, once we paint the boy, we can do then, let's say, the photograph. Then I guess we could do some of the things down here, the table, checkerboard. I mean, you could obliterate that if you want to get rid of that as well. Like, basically, I think we're going to put the same brown into, from the pants onto the table here. Let me just continue these lines here. Okay. So, I think about another hour and we'll be all done. So, let's mix that brown. I guess we could use the same brown we did earlier, but let's do it again. So let's take some warm red. We're going to need some more warm yellow on our palette. Warm red, warm yellow, mix that up together. We got our orange. I'll take some warm blue. Alright, so now we got, it's very green, right? And I like this green. In fact, that green would probably work pretty well for our background if we just added a little bit, like in this area right here. We could glaze on top of that. Maybe... You know what? While I've got this color here, I think I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to glaze over top of this peachy color here. It's going to, you know, while the opportunity presents itself, sometimes you got to take that detour. So let's put a bit of... So I got this paint, and then let's just put some glazing fluid on there. So we made it much thinner. All right, and then let's just paint this. Over top. Now I'm not exactly sure that this is what he did here, but oh, some water just dripped down from above. Not good. Just have to be mindful of that. So I think what's just happened is we just need to make this a little bit on the darker side of things. So I just wiped a bit of the paint off of my brush here. What kind of happened here is I started putting wet glaze on top of glaze it was trying to dry, which is always a bit of a amateur move. But I'm just, this paint is drying so quick that it really had a much quicker effect than it normally would. So I'm just trying to brush out some of these brush strokes. I actually don't mind that the result that I've got here is, the only thing is it's a little bit different than the original, but let that dry. So what was I going to do? I was going to do a brown. Okay, so let's go back to the original plan here. Let's mix this together. We got a bit of a purpley color. Let's get a little more yellow in there. It's a bit more blue. Too much blue. I'm a little worried all that glazing fluid in there is going to affect how this paint goes onto the canvas, but we'll see here in a moment. bit semi-transparent here. I don't mind the color. It's just the glazing fluid in there has made this just a more transparent paint. So for the next bunch of paintings we're going to do, I'll have all of the outlines traced out beforehand, so I can start launching right into the painting. I have been thinking about doing a quick drawing of them at the beginning of every episode to help people who don't have the tracing, help them kind of get the composition started. You could let me know if you think that's a good idea or a waste of time. I think most people who've been following for a while use the template that I make on the Dropbox, but not everyone has a printer at home or even access to a printer at work or wherever else, so I do want these classes to be as accessible as possible. So, and it might be, even if you can print it, it might be kind of fun for people just to practice a little bit of their drawing. Okay. So I have to wait for these pants to dry, and it's going pretty fast. Maybe while that's drying, let's just think about what if I add a little bit of, I wonder if I add a bit of white to this, we'll get closer to like a skin tone. And one thing you can do is, if you're mixing skin tones, just paint them onto your skin, and you can see how close you actually are. I mean, I've basically made one that's very similar to my own skin color. It just might be, in terms of this painting, a little bit too close to life. We might want one that's just a little bit more cartoony, right? Where's my white? There's my white. Okay. So I'll just have to wait for that to dry. I know I painted over all the details, but when I initially did the outline, it barely any of that, the face turned out anyway. It was just kind of obliterated, so. tell is the glazing medium kind of burned off a little bit here as it was drying. Okay. So, now, let me see. Let's mix a really dark color for the socks. Actually, even we got this dark. We can kind of continue with the dark brown here. Before I completely move on, I'm just going to take a bit more of the yellow. Get this bit of a dark blonde brown hair. Should be a bit darker, shouldn't it? Not quite as dark as the pants. That one, just have to let that dry for a few minutes. Okay. So the question in my mind is the colors that I've got on the walls and floor, am I happy with them or do I want to change them? Which is a good question, because, you know, this color, this kind of greenish color, I don't know if I want that green on my wall. That seems a little bit weird. And you can see a bit of that green cast on this wall. I don't know. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to glaze a bit of white. Oops. Okay, I got a couple cameras just went off again. So just going to turn the cameras that are over across the room. I'm going to turn them off so I can. Man. Maria says, I like drawing, so that might be an interesting thing for us to do then. Okay, to do a little bit of sketching at the beginning of each class. Drawing in our sketchbooks. Okay. I need some more warm yellow. I'm going to paint the boy's shirt now. So I'm going to take some warm yellow and some warm blue. Mix these together. Now they're going like right across the color wheel from one another, so that's why they get, it has a bit of this faded green kind of color. But you might say, well, it's too it needs a bit more brightening up. So let's just add a little bit more blue, like cool blue and cool yellow into that mixture to get it just a bit more of a pop to it. guys, so that's going to need to dry for a couple minutes. Or probably less. By the time it's dry, we can paint on it in a minute. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix like a really, really dark blue. For these socks, and really just to get that kind of that dark color, we're just going to take the warm blue. Let's take a little bit of cool blue. Come on. Mix that in there. That's going to make it a little bit less transparent. Let's take our cool red. Bit of warm red in here. So now we got a pretty darn dark color. It looks a little bit more on the purpley side, which is not, you know, too surprising since we've been just using colors on the bottom part of the color wheel. But let's put this in the window here real quick. Okay. Again, I can always just use black if I want. And we use black almost in every episode. But I do think it is like a really, really, really useful skill as a painter to be able to make a dark color without your black. Right? I mean, that's pretty darn dark, right? And it does a lot of the work that we might want a dark color to do, but it's got a bit of extra life in there. And we can use this same color for doing the image in the black and white photograph. Which, yeah, let's do that right after this. So I think these are supposed to be socks. But they could be boots too. Okay. Now, yeah, let's do this photograph. Now the image in the photo is of two players embracing after a goal. Now, we're not going to be able to do all of that detail, or at least I'm not, or I'm not going to bother attempting it. I'm going to add just a little bit of white into my paint, so it's not quite as dark as other areas have been. Let's see, we've got... I don't know if anyone's going to be able to know what on earth is going on in this poster here. I should have added a little more white to that. Wait till that dries. It's going to make those boards a little bit darker there. Or I guess I should make the crowd brighter back there. Yeah, so let's darken. Let's just adjust all of this here. Just going to paint that out. Go back in here with some white. um, Okay, now I'm just going to come back and start darkening a few things. These look like these guys might be fighting one another in my painting. That's okay. Not sure why my image is so much. Well, it looks like it did carry over and I just shortened it a bit. Okay, I'm not sure I want to spend too much more time on that than I did here. Just sort of giving an idea that there's a couple of guys that are doing something in the picture. Okay, let's come back to these socks and darken those. I got a bit of something on came off my hand, so let's just fix that up. Now I'm going to do some glazing to darken a few things down here momentarily, but I'm just got to wait for, I want to kind of get a little bit more done. Here's this shirt. This is just, was it warm yellow, warm blue, and a little bit of and a little bit of cold yellow and cold blue. Oops. Okay. Oh, I didn't even see his arm kind of going in behind his head there. Okay. So I'm just going to do that hair again. Man, these paints are just drying so quickly. Usually I can leave the paint out on the palette for maybe 10 minutes with confidence that I can go back and pick up a little bit of that paint and paint with it again, but not today. Let's do a little bit of detail on the face. So I'm going to take my dark color that I got mixed up here. Not a lot of space to be able to do too much here. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the blue on the jersey. Let's just finish this up here, and then we're gonna be pretty close to just now glazing, putting in some darker lines here and there. But most of the heavy lifting on this painting has been done. Oops, I'm just going to paint. fix that when I paint some white stripes on here. Okay. Just going to do the same thing with some red and put that like I could see somebody doing this with the Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, which would be kind of funny and ironic. But because the whole story is that of the hockey sweater is that he's a Montreal Canadiens fan, and his mom gets him a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey for I don't think there's any special occasion. It's just his Toronto or his Montreal jersey has worn thin, and the mom is worried that that people are going to think that they're poor, so she wants it replaced. Okay, so let's zoom out. And let's just think about, like, and before we, because the last thing is we're going to do is do a little bit of outlining. And, oh, I guess there's some red here in the checkerboards. Isn't it, there's always like, oh, we're almost done. And then, oh, actually, no, gotta get this done. And then this done. Water dripping from above. Ah, where'd that? It's the same place. I'm gonna have to figure a better system if we have this kind of heat for an extended period of time. I appreciate people in the chat there promoting the my drawing classes. That's that's very nice. Yeah, I think Marie was talking about the because I did ask, what about if we did a quick sketch of like this, let's say in our sketchbook before we began? Would people like to do that kind of thing? So. Okay, I think what I'm going to do next is I'm gonna do a little bit of glazing here. So I'm going to take, there's this white, and it's got a bit of color in there, but I don't mind that. Now let's take some glazing fluid. let's say, like, if we just... Yikes. Got water dripping from different places now. Right, that kind of brightens that wall up. I might do a line across there, and that's going to just make things really easy. So let's just take a bit more glazing fluid and a bit more white. Makes me anxious. Water dripping while I'm painting, but gotta move quick, right? And you're gonna be an artist. Let's go to a smaller brush here. You know, it's interesting, like things like this, like where there's water dripping from the ceiling, because I got an ice pack above my painting. I know that we all have like our own little circumstances we gotta work around, and as frustrating as it can be, I tend to kind of look at it as about as positive as you can, not just out of because I don't really have much of a choice, I guess, but because it is kind of I'm actually really fascinated by like artwork as relics. And so for me, the fact that the painting might contain some of the water from the ice pack, all that kind of stuff to me is even more interesting. It's the kind of things that, like, when I look at paintings in museums and you read the text on the wall, or you learn about art history, that kind of thing is like really fascinating to me, because it's like, oh, this painting was made under whatever conditions, and the reason why blah 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 happened, or the reason why there's white or yellow here is because, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Just those are things I think about all the time as actually things that make the painting more interesting. Okay. Obviously my radiator needs to get a little bit darker, so we'll darken that in a second. I think I'm also going to do the same thing on the ground here, but it's not going to be quite as white. So let's just think about if we want to just darken this, get it a little bit more brown. Just take a tiny, oh, that's a lot of red. Let's put a bit of cold yellow in there. Let's put a little bit of blue in here. It's basically the same color. I'm gonna warm it up. Some warm yellow. That's a bit closer to the original. The other thing that's happening, which is a little bit frustrating, is you see these little pieces of dried paint, like little skins, keep showing up because the paint is drying fast, and parts of my palette are drying, and then when I blend paint into them, they they're picking up all these little skins from the tops of the dried paint. Which again is not ideal, but later on, it's like the way I can kind of, the best example of all of this is Jackson Pollock paintings, who, if you like researchers, there's a whole chapter in his what is it called, retrospective catalog the Museum of Modern Art put out. There's a whole chapter on the things that they found in his paintings, including bugs and cigarette butts and footprints and fingerprints and hairs from the brushes and things that were like rocks and leaves and pieces of grass that were on his shoes and stuff when he was painting. And so they can actually identify the authenticity of his paintings based on those kind of details. In fact, there's a really great movie called I think it's called My Kid Could Paint That. And it's about this woman who, she's like a truck driver who bought this painting at a garage sale, and then somebody came over to her house and said it was a Pollock and it was worth millions, and then so she goes on, it's a documentary, and she goes on the search to try to find the truth about this painting that she owns. And one of the ways that they're trying to authenticate it is they notice that there's things in the painting, and they learn that it's Pollock had left similar things accidentally in his paintings. So does that mean that this painting she bought for like $20 or whatever at a garage sale could possibly be the real thing, precisely because of all the debris that's in the painting? I don't know, I just find that stuff absolutely fascinating. Oh, I think I painted the wrong thing here, maybe? I'm not sure what I was thinking. Sometimes I have that experience where I'm painting a painting and I go back to something, I'm like, what was the thought process here? Why did I do that? And then sometimes you're like, I wasn't paying attention. And then you try to fix it, and then 10 minutes later you're like, Oh, now I realized that person, me, back in time, wasn't so stupid after all. I was made some decisions purposefully, and then I just ignored it. Okay. So I'm just going to turn some cameras back on. Okay. So, getting closer to the end here. There's this shape down here. I can't remember what it was in the original, so I'm just going to turn this into, it's like a big yellow lampy form. I'm just going to paint that out and clean it up a bit. There's also the box too. Oh yeah. That wall. Forgot that too, didn't I? So I'm just trying to, I want a color, it's not quite as dark for here. It's too white. Okay, so I think we need the radiator needs to get more darker. So let's make a gray again. It's going to take basically a slop mix of whatever's left here. So I'm just taking kind of random colors as they're kind of running out. Just to get something kind of dark, right? And let's spin the rest of that off my brush. And then I'll go into my white, grab that, and then it's just a matter of how much white do I want on there. This will be a little bit more on the purpley side. I'm just going to make this, I'm kind of going pretty quick because I'm kind of running a little bit behind and don't want to miss my daughter's bath. Definitely darker, way darker than the original, but and I'm actually, while I'm gonna take the same darker color and just use it to do a bit of outlining here on the bed frame. Still a little bit of wet paint here that I'm painting over top of, which is a bit frustrating, but which is kind of funny. You know, I have these parts of this painting that dry really fast, and then you got parts that are, I guess I put a little bit more paint on so they're a bit thicker. Whoops, that's much. How did that just... Okay. I'm also going to just go over this blue. I think it needs a bit more. My white and the blue. I'm going to mix a bit more of it than I did last time. So I love doing this part of the painting where I'm going in and clarifying and cleaning things up and all of that. Probably heard me talk about, like, this for me is where I feel like I'm painting. The rest of it is fun, and it should be fun, because it's really about like just slapping paint around, and there's a bit of a randomness to everything. But this is where I really feel like I'm resolving things, bringing clarity to the painting. And I'm going back over the painting. Also, everything just starts to kind of come together, and it doesn't look so sloppy, messy. Right, so I got that right. I kind of added this part down here where the curtain kind of bends out and back in. That I hadn't done the first time around. And I don't know if I'm gonna. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to decide if I want to do a bunch of outlines all over the place or keep it fairly simple. He does use outlines. There's no judgment about it. I think it's, if you can get away with painting or leaving a painting without outlines, I would say that would be ideal, just because it takes less time. And outlines can take you a while, like especially if you struggle with like some fine detailing. So if you can make a painting that doesn't require outlines, I think that's would be probably that would be a win. And there certainly are within art history examples where people really looked down their nose on the outline. I kind of compared it to the narrator's voice in film, and many film directors will talk about like that as just being a crutch or an amateur device. But then, you know, there's many examples of movies that are, you know, very famous and beloved films, like Forrest Gump, for instance, uses narration all the way through. But, you know, it obviously has been a very popular film, right? Paula asks, hey Michael, do we have class on Canada Day, July 1st? Well, I'm going to be here painting on July 1st, on Thursday. You're welcome to take the time off and just do the painting whenever you want. On Canada Day, I'm going to be painting a Ken Danby painting, a very famous painting. Also kind of hockey related, but very different than this painting. And the outline for that is already up on the Moodle, not the Moodle. That's what Moodle is the interface I use at Emily Carr. It's already up on the Dropbox. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. But by all means, if you want to celebrate in a different way, then I encourage you to do so. So you could see, well, I don't know if you could see or not, but about 8 or 9 times now, water has been dripping from above onto my painting. This is water from that ice pack that I got so that the camera would stay on. So that is happening throughout the painting process. And if there's a little bit of you can see a bit of it. As long as you're really, really quick at dabbing it up, you don't really want to be scrubbing, otherwise you're literally going to scrub paint off the surface. You can kind of save it, your painting. You just have to be really quick on the spot, on the ball. Okay, so I'm going to make another dark color here. Take some warm red, warm blue, cool blue. Let's put some warm red in here, and a bit of cold yellow. Nice dark color. I'm going to use this for the windows and the checkerboard. Let's do the window first. And then once I'm done this, I'm going to do a little bit of glazing on the... well, actually, I don't know. Maybe on that back wall. Since I've got lots of splotches in that particular... Oh, God, it wasn't even on camera. So it's, again, it's totally up to you to, like, do you want to do all of the lines on the floorboards or not? Do you want to do the lines separating some of the walls and the I'm going to try to do as much of that as possible. I mean, my goal with every episode is to try to get as close as possible to the original. I guess that's, you can see that's close enough. Okay, so with my dark color here, I'm going to put a little bit of glazing fluid, not a lot, because I don't want it to get too transparent, but it'll just make this a little bit easier to brush around. And I don't really necessarily want super dark, thick lines anyway, because they're going to really carry too much weight. Nice little simple thin lines. I say that as I make a bunch of big thick dark lines. Ah! Now, this was, I kind of buggered that up. I really, this table really should be coming up over top of that. So, I really should repaint that. Okay. Oh, gosh. My daughter just dropped something upstairs. It scared me. I do feel compelled to mix a brown. So the reason why I just did this is not because I wanted to make it look more like the original. I mean, that's obviously a part of it. But really, the reason why he did this is he wanted there to be no confusion that this shape was in front of this shape, right? And by overlapping them, it immediately takes away any kind of confusion in the mind of the viewer, or at least it should anyway, right? So that's why I just did what I did. Let's keep on rolling here with some outlining. What else needs to be outlined? I gotta paint that yellow. I gotta get the radiator done. And then raindrops keep falling on my paintings. Okay, I think I am gonna use my hairdryer just to blow dry some of this. Oh no, there's more water dripping. I wonder if anyone else is probably not. This is probably a fairly isolated problem. I think just gotta move my painting out of the way. Let's see how much time I can get without that ice pack on here. And I can't find my... Must be losing my mind. Oh, there it is. Okay. Still a little bit wet there. I just didn't want to put too much heat into this room that is already so hot. Ah, I missed the pipe on the floor there. So what I've got here is my darkest color with a fair amount of glazing fluid in it, and that turns it into a bit of a gray as I'm painting with it. So I can do these outlines and they become a little bit transparent. They'll dry a little bit darker, so that, like, imagine if I was doing this with black, like it would just be too dark. And you know, black would be okay, but I think it just would be, we don't want something maybe so, like the black would really call attention to itself in places, and you really want to save the black as like your backup to really bail you out of certain things. Just like you want to maybe save the white for certain kinds of things. You don't want to just use white all over the place. Okay, I think I'm going to do a few lines on the floor. I'm going to do an outline of the these sheets. And as I'm doing this, I'm using progressively more glazing fluid in this paint. Wasn't happy with that, so just wipe it away. Okay, I am going to do that stuff on the floor. I'm just wondering about this. Let's see if I can clean some of this up here. Okay. Actually, wasn't planning on going up here just yet, but while the painting is this angle, it's like, oh, this actually is perfect for doing this. So you can see the line that I just did, like very subtle, right? I'm glazing with my darkest color. And it's just kind of intersecting between colors very, very subtly. And I think that's more satisfying than a big, dark, heavy line there. don't think I'm going to outline everything, but it does feel good putting some of these in here, especially where there's paint. It's maybe didn't go on as clean as I would have liked. So putting these lines on just sort of immediately cleans things up, and as I keep saying, it brings clarity. Like even this area right here, there's a bit of that white spilt over that I wiped away at one point. Having this like that, I think just okay, it just, let's see, where did okay, and then there's another one right up above here. Not sure where that red came from. Okay, anyway. And then the great thing about this is if I want to, you know, make anything more visible, I can just glaze over it again. Let's look at this here. I think I need to put some waves on the drapery. So we're getting pretty close to being done. In a couple of days, we'll meet again on Canada Day for a special Canada Day painting. We'll see how many people join me. If you're not able to, I totally understand it. It's not Canada Day for everybody. For people living outside of the country who aren't Canadian, which is the vast majority of the world, there's maybe there's another holiday people are celebrating. Obviously I'm doing these lines a little bit different than he did. He didn't do a line there, but I think I might do a little quick line in between the two parts, folds of the curtain, just to clarify that. Okay, so now I've obviously painted way over top of any of these lines on the floor. So in order to, I think I'm just going to get my ruler out. And probably not going to put as many lines on here. So it gets tricky when you're doing a big space here with lots of lines, and then especially when they don't meet on this side. So much so that I think when I get to that point, I'm going to have to see. I can already see that going a little bit off. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there. So let's just start this. Okay, not bad. Okay. So I guess the last thing I'm looking at here is what else do I need to do? Maybe I should paint this yellow. Ah, this camera. So, wow, these ice packs for the past couple of hours have just completely melted. Funny, as it warms up, it looks like it's a little bit darker than it was. Okay. Like, if I look at the original, he's got little shadows under there. So I think what I want to do is mix a bit of a brown. I think this will be the last thing that I do. Maybe this red's still gone. So I'm just going to glaze with this brown. The reason I'm using a different color than the blue, the dark blue that I've been doing all the outlining with, is that I want it to look different. I want there to be kind of a little bit of clarity, the difference between this glaze and the other one. It never hurts to have some differentiation here. So do the same thing. You know what? I'm going to put a bit of a glaze right in between. There we go. Instead of a line, let's glaze that up. Cool. Now I'm just kind of going off of my own, adding shadows where I feel like they could be helpful. Okay, so I was just adding these little hints here and there, and I think that's probably pretty good. Now I'm getting into territory that is kind of deviates from his painting a bit, so I might just, although I love doing this kind of stuff, so yeah, I think I might just end there. Okay, so let's just zoom out so we see both of them side by side one last time. There's definitely a few things, you know, the painting here that kind of bugs me that I didn't spend more time on that there. Come on. I feel like it might have been a good idea to have put something on here, maybe a big poster of the Montreal Canadien there or something. Doesn't bother me so much. I find it's almost a little bit radical having a big space like that, but otherwise I think things are pretty good. Okay, so let's sign it up. Okay, that feels good. I think this is, I mean, we have done some comic book stuff recently, but this is the first time we've done anything that's like children's illustration explicitly. Even though, again, I think this film is really transcends children's literature tremendously. Like, where did I put those issues? Just before we close out here, the French and the English are identical, in case you're wondering. But you know, it's a fairly simple book. There's maybe like 20 pages in here. Maybe let's just take a second. And these are they look very similar to the animations on in the animated film, but it looks like there's a few that aren't in there and that he may have done explicitly just for the book. Like, this is not, I don't remember these pages in the or images from the animated film, but right, so she orders a new shirt from the Eaton's catalog, and they're based in Toronto, so they send her a Maple Leaf sweater. He wears it, and all of his friends, who all wear the exact same number 9 jersey for Maurice Richard, arguably the greatest hockey player ever, him and Wayne Gretzky maybe, and Gordie Howe, I suppose. And he gets upset because they're laughing and yell. Actually, they won't let him play, so he smashes his stick, and then the curate, I think in the original it's Vicar, sends him over to the church to go and beg God for forgiveness, because he shouldn't. a good boy should never lose his temper. So then you see him walking back to the church, and then in the church he prays for 1,000,000 moths to descend and to eat his sweater up. And it doesn't show in the book, but in the animated film, all of these moths come down, chew on the sweater, and it disappears up into the air. And then Maurice Richard appears in kind of his thought balloon and comes out and shakes his hand or to congratulate him. Which I think is like a really funny change that Sheldon Cohen added to the story that isn't in the original. There makes no mention of this Maurice Richard, his approval or his fantasy, this fantasy that's interacting with him in real life, which happens I think twice in the story. That Sheldon Cohen, those were innovations that he made onto the Roche Carrier's story, which I think is really interesting. It adds another dimension to it, which is, I think, what an illustrator should do, arguably. I mean, there's certain people who say the illustrator should just, illustrate the words. I personally, as an artist, think the illustrator should bring something additional and unique that, reading between the lines, elevating some kind of subtext or whatever. The interesting thing about the hockey sweater is, for many people see it as a reflection on the bilingual nature of Canada and the relationship between French and English people within Canada, and which has always been a kind of prickly relationship, because quite frankly there was once France and England had occupied different colonies in eastern Canada, and there was a long war, and eventually England won, and French Canada became just a province of the greater colony system of the English Empire. So there was a lot of hard feelings there, and so that sort of plays out through this very simple children's story, where this little boy is given the sweater which represents English Canada, and he lives in French Canada, and justifiably many of the people in his community are like shocked, and he's shocked. He doesn't want to wear this sweater. He's embarrassed by it. And it's funny that the way that it resolves is not... I think if this story was written today, it would be, we all learn to get along, and he can wear his Maple Leaf sweater, and everyone on the rink is like, oh, we accept your differences, and it's okay to wear them. We all understand, but that's not how this story ends. It ends with him in shame and embarrassment. He's been cast out of the community. He goes to the church, and he, rather than begging for forgiveness for being angry and smashing a stick, he begs God to destroy this sweater, right? Which is funny, but it also probably represents many of the feelings that certain people in Quebec have about being a province within English Canada. And which is why there's been 3 votes about Quebec separating from Canada. Was it 3 or just 2? I thought it was 3. All of which have been very close, much closer than I think many people even imagined. So anyway, it's always interesting. Children's books often have a lot more going on that obviously flies over the heads of children, but when adults are reading it, you're like, whoa, that's interesting, that's quite meaningful. Anyway, if you're looking for a good book to get a kid in your family, you probably couldn't go much worse than either the English or the French versions, both of which, again, are completely identical. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me and painting along with me tonight. We will see you in a couple of days when we celebrate Canada Day. And then on the weekend, we are going to do a special U.S. Independence Day painting. So we're going to do a Jasper Johns white flag painting, one of his flag painting series, and that flag painting is definitely one of his most famous paintings, one of the most famous paintings from the 1960s. So we're going to celebrate both Canada and the United States over the next few days, and then we're going to spend most of July and August looking at mostly Canadian painters. So that's going to be really exciting, because I know certain people have asked me about a number of artists, so that we're going to cover all of those over the next few weeks. So thank you, everyone, for joining me for painting along, and we will see you in a couple days. Hope it's a little bit cooler next time I see you. Take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye.